On the night of August 20th, 1989, Beverly Hills was rocked by a brutal double homicide that sent shockwaves across the nation. The victims were José and Kitty Menendez, a wealthy and influential couple who were gunned down in their multi-million-dollar mansion.
Beverly Hills emergency?
Yes, please.
What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem?
Someone killed my parents.
Pardon me?
Someone killed my parents.
What?
What truly shocked the world wasn't just the murder itself. It was the discovery that their two sons, Lyle and Erik Menendez, were responsible for the killings. The Menendez brothers case quickly became one of the most infamous true crime stories in American history. What could drive two young men, raised in a life of privilege, to murder their own parents? Was it cold-blooded greed, or were there deeper, darker family secrets at play? Before we get into the horrific details of the crime, let's take a look at the Menendez family. José Menendez was a Cuban-American immigrant who worked his way up from humble beginnings to become a highly successful entertainment executive. His wife, Kitty Menendez, had been an elementary school teacher before becoming a full-time homemaker. Together, they had built a life of luxury in Beverly Hills, raising their two sons, Lyle and Erik, in the lap of privilege. On the outside, the Menendez family seemed like the perfect American success story. José was a powerful and demanding father, pushing his sons to achieve greatness, while Kitty was the devoted mother. Though she struggled with emotional and mental health issues, Lyle and Erik grew up in an environment where success was expected and failure wasn't an option. But behind the facade of wealth and happiness, the family was hiding dark secrets. On the night of August 20th, 1989, everything changed. Lyle, then 21, and Erik, 18, stormed into their parents' Beverly Hills mansion armed with shotguns. José and Kitty were relaxing in the living room watching TV. What happened next was nothing short of a massacre. Lyle and Erik unleashed a barrage of gunfire on their father, shooting him multiple times in the head and body, killing him almost instantly. Kitty, hearing the shots, attempted to flee, but she was quickly caught by the brothers. They shot her repeatedly. Kitty Menendez's last moments were brutal. She tried to escape, but the Menendez brothers showed no mercy. They shot her multiple times, first in the leg, then in the arms, and finally with fatal shots to her face and chest. The once peaceful living room was transformed into a gruesome crime scene, with blood splattered across the floor, furniture, and walls. José and Kitty Menendez were dead, executed by their own sons. After the murders, Lyle and Erik didn't flee in a panic. Instead, they calmly staged the scene to look like a mob hit. They removed the shotguns, disposed of the shell casings, and left the house. To solidify their alibi, the brothers went to see a movie and later returned home, acting like they had just discovered their parents' bodies. Around 11:47 p.m., Lyle made a frantic 911 call, screaming into the phone, "Somebody killed my parents."
What's the problem? What's the problem?
Someone killed my parents.
Pardon me?
Someone killed my parents.
What? Who? Are they still there?
Yes.
The people...
No.
Were they shot?
Hey, man,
Were they shot?
Yes.
They were shot?
Yes.
What happened?
When police arrived, they found the brothers sobbing uncontrollably in the front yard, playing the role of devastated sons perfectly. It appeared to be a random, violent crime, and for a while, the police were convinced this was a botched robbery or professional hit. But as the investigation unfolded, things didn't add up. Initially, detectives believed the Menendez murders might have been connected to José's business dealings. José was a wealthy and powerful man, and it wasn't out of the question that enemies from his professional life might want him dead. But as investigators dug deeper, suspicions began to shift toward the two people no one had originally considered, Lyle and Erik. The brothers' behavior after the murders raised red flags. Instead of staying low and grieving their loss, they embarked on an outlandish spending spree. Within weeks of their parents' deaths, Lyle and Erik had burned through nearly $700,000 of their family's wealth. They bought luxury cars, expensive watches, designer clothes, and even invested in a restaurant. Lyle, the older of the two, purchased a Porsche and a Rolex watch. Erik hired a personal tennis coach, and traveled the world competing in tournaments. The extravagance didn't stop there. The brothers moved out of the family mansion and into separate penthouse apartments, sparking further suspicion. To the outside world, it seemed as if Lyle and Erik were basking in their newfound wealth rather than mourning their parents. Investigators began to wonder, could this have been a motive? But it wasn't just the spending that raised alarms. As detectives looked into the Menendez family, they began hearing whispers of something far darker, a history of abuse that allegedly plagued the family behind closed doors. Lyle and Erik began telling close friends about their father's tyrannical control and their mother's emotional instability. It was becoming clear that the Menendez family wasn't as picture-perfect as they appeared. For months, the Menendez brothers maintained their innocence. The investigation dragged on without any solid leads, and it seemed as though Lyle and Erik might get away with the perfect crime. But in the end, it wasn't forensic evidence that cracked the case. It was guilt. Erik Menendez, racked with guilt over what they had done, confided in his therapist, Dr. L. Jerome Oziel. Erik revealed everything: the planning, the execution, and the emotional turmoil that followed the murders. But Dr. Oziel wasn't bound by the secret of confidentiality forever. After a confrontation with his mistress, who had overheard the confessions, Oziel was pressured into recording conversations with Erik and Lyle, ultimately turning those tapes over to the police. With these tapes, authorities finally had the evidence they needed. The Menendez brothers were arrested in March 1990 and charged with the murder of their parents. The trial of the Menendez brothers captivated the nation. The prosecution argued that Lyle and Erik were motivated by greed, killing their parents to inherit their vast fortune. They painted the brothers as spoiled, entitled young men who couldn't wait to get their hands on the family's wealth. But the defense had a different story to tell, a story that shocked the public and turned the trial into a media circus. Lyle and Erik claimed they had been subjected to years of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse at the hands of their father, José Menendez. They argued that the murders weren't about money, but about survival. According to the brothers, their father's abuse had reached a breaking point, and they believed their only option was to kill him before he could kill them. The defense introduced harrowing testimony about the alleged abuse. Erik testified in detail about the sexual abuse he claimed to have endured since childhood.
Did your father have sexual contact with you?
Yes.
And how did it start?
Fondle me, and he would ask me to do the same with him, and I would touch him, and we would undress.
And Lyle recounted how their mother, Kitty, had been emotionally unstable and complicit in the abuse. They said that their mother was addicted to alcohol and drugs and turned a blind eye to what was happening in their household. The courtroom was divided. Were Lyle and Erik victims of unimaginable abuse who had acted out of fear, or were they cold-blooded killers driven by greed? The jury was equally divided. After months of emotional testimony, the trial ended in 2 deadlocked juries, one for each brother. A mistrial was declared. In 1995, the Menendez brothers faced a retrial, and this time, the judge ruled that the defense could not focus as heavily on the abuse claims, arguing that it had overshadowed the facts of the murder. With this restriction in place, the prosecution was able to tighten their case, and the focus returned to the brothers' financial motives. The second trial lacked the emotional fireworks of the first, and the jury was far less sympathetic to the Menendez brothers this time around. On March 20th, 1996, Lyle and Erik Menendez were both found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. They were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the verdict was read, the once defiant brothers broke down in tears. Their reign of wealth, privilege, and manipulation had come to an end. But even as they were led away in handcuffs, the debate about their motivations raged on. Were Lyle and Erik driven to murder by years of abuse, or were they simply greedy killers who wanted their parents out of the way? Since their conviction, Lyle and Erik have lived behind bars, spending the rest of their lives in separate prisons. Both brothers have since married while incarcerated and have worked to build a life behind bars. Despite their efforts to appeal their conviction, their sentences have remained unchanged. As the years passed, many began to reassess the case, including some high-profile celebrities. Kim Kardashian, who was just a child when the murders happened, became one of the most vocal supporters of Lyle and Erik. In 2017, she tweeted about her interest in criminal justice reform and expressed her belief that the Menendez brothers had suffered greatly under their parents' control and should be given a second chance. She advocated for their release, stating that they were victims of a violent household. In 2017, the case was revisited with the release of the true crime TV show, Law & Order True Crime: The Menendez Murders, which once again brought the case back into the spotlight and reignited public interest in one of the most shocking family murder cases in American history.